and welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, hello, hi, welcome. My name is Wendy Ivy Martinez and I am a geek, and this channel is all about books and pretty soon hopefully other geeky things. Today I'm going to be giving you book recommendations based off of your favorite romance trope. Now, you guys might know that I am not the biggest fan of regular romance, so a lot of these are going to be romantasy picks. However, I do have a few romance, regular contemporary romance picks for you as well as dark romance too. A lot of these I have read, but a few of these I have not, and I will let you know which I have and which I have not. So without further ado, let's get started. Now the first book trope that I'm going to be talking about is the iconic, everyone's fave, including myself, enemies to lovers romances. Starting with the creme of the creme, the favorite, the slow burn enemies to lovers that you just need them to like get together, and that is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Okay, like I said, I'm going to have some romantasy in here, and you know that I cannot pass up on this super hyped up book that is definitely worth the hype. Fourth Wing talks about our main character, Violet Sorrengail, as she tries to get into this dragon school. She's kind of forced into it by her mother, and she has this disability that makes it a little bit more difficult than other people. And then she comes face to face with her arch nemesis, whose father was literally killed by her mother, Xaden Ryerson. And you just see the tension throughout the whole book. Oh my gosh. When I tell you that it's enemies to lovers, and it's also slow burn, it literally takes hundreds upon hundreds of pages for these two to finally get together. But when they do, and you get to that smut scene, literally the best smut scene I have ever read in my whole entire life. The next enemies to lovers book that I'm going to recommend is another one that I really loved, and it was one of my favorites of 2022, and that is A Touch of Darkness by Scarlett St. Clair. This is a Hades and Persephone's retelling, but make it modern. So take like Lore Olympus, which is like a modern Persephone and Hades retelling, but make it a little bit more spicy, actually pretty spicy, and that is what you get. We follow our main character in this world where the gods, the Greek gods, live amongst the humans, and Persephone is finally allowed to live amongst the humans. And she becomes a journalist, and she really wants to do this article on Hades, who owns this like big nightclub, and he's like this super mysterious person. So she's like, I'm gonna write an article about him. I'm gonna make this big paper so that people can pay attention to me. And she does. And Hades takes interest in her, and in more than just the article that she wrote. It's so good. This is another steam romance. The first book specifically, I rated it 5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this book. I really enjoyed the story. Give me any Hades Persephone retelling, add some spice to it, and I'm gonna read it. The next enemies to lovers is, surprise, surprise, another romantasy, and that is The Serpent and the Wings of Night by Carissa Broadbent. This book is like, if you liked Fourth Wing, more than likely you're probably gonna like this book. If you like vampires and you are craving something with vampires, and you're craving something with like Hunger Games-ish vibes, you would like Serpent and the Wings of Night, because in this story we follow our main character, and our main character is a human that was raised by vampires, and she basically is entered in this competition where if she wins, she would be able to be granted one wish by the goddess of night, or the goddess of the vampires. But obviously she is a human, so she is not as fast, she's not as lethal, she's not as dangerous as a vampire is, so she teams up with a vampire, and she hates vampires. She teams up with a vampire in order to win. And obviously a romance blossoms, but there's still a lot of action, and it's like jam-packed with like fantasy and adventure and amongst the romance as well. And the romance is done very beautifully, and it is also very, very slow burn. And then for the last enemies to lovers book recommendation that I have for you, I'm going to recommend Punk 57 by Penelope Douglas. This is, I don't know if this is considered a dark romance. I kind of want to consider it a dark romance because we do have some quite heavy topics in here. We follow these two characters as they were like pen pals growing up. While everybody else in their classes stopped talking to their pen pals, they sort of really liked each other, and growing up, even from elementary school up into adulthood, they continue to write each other letters until all of a sudden one of them just stops writing letters, and then they go off to find the other person, and I believe they don't know that this person was their pen pal. So there is a friends, but actually they're enemies now, because once they meet each other, they absolutely hate each other. Like, they were perfect for each other until they finally got to meet each other, and then they hated each other. And the romance is pretty toxic, but I still ate it up, okay? I still ate it up. There was a lot of spice, and it was very, very well written. So that concludes our enemies to lovers. Let's get into another very popular romance trope, fake dating. We're gonna start off with the queen of fake dating tropes, and that is Ali Hazelwood. There are two very popular books that she has wrote. One is The Love Hypothesis, obviously by Ali Hazelwood, and in this one we follow a professor and a student, but she's not like a student, like she's like post-grad or something like that, and her friends are trying to like get her to like date someone. So she's like, she grabs the first person that she sees, which ends up being her professor, and kisses him, and now her friends think that she is fake dating him. So that one was really good. I really did enjoy the story. I ended up rating it 4 out of 5 stars. It was my first Ali Hazelwood book, and it was done very beautiful, and I believe this is Rilo fan fiction. If you want the spice, there is only one spice scene in it, but it is a whole chapter long, so you do get a lot of it, and it is slow burn. It is very, very descriptive. And the other Ali Hazelwood book that I am going to recommend to you that is fake dating would be Love Theoretically. This is about a girl who gets paid to fake date people, and she pretends to fake date this guy's brother when in reality she really likes him. And it's this whole thing, but it does involve fake dating because you literally pay her to like go on dates with her and introduce her to your family. She's basically a rent-a-girlfriend. This one I didn't really enjoy, to be honest with you. I think I rated it like 2 out of 5 stars, but it is a really popular one, so that is why I wanted to mention it here. The spice was there. It did have spice in it, but I just didn't like it. I don't know, I didn't like it. And the romance, it was just, I think all of her stories just sort of started to melt into one. It just seemed like she was writing the same thing over and over and over again. So I wasn't really like impressed. I kind of already knew what was coming because I had read a few other works from her, and it all just seems to follow along the same lines. But the romance itself, if this is like your first Ali Hazelwood books and you don't know what to expect, I guess you could say, yeah, 4 out of 5 stars. Me personally, I didn't enjoy it, but I wanted to mention it on here because it is a very popular one that a lot of other people do enjoy. The next one is Written in the Stars, and this one is a sapphic romance. I really did like this one. It is about 2 women that like go on this like blind date, I guess, and then they end up really pretending to date, but then of course a romance ensues. This one I really did enjoy. I think I rated it like 3.5 stars out of 5. I felt like it was lacking something. I don't know, it was just lacking something for me, but overall I did enjoy it. It was quite an enjoyable read. The spice is there. There is quite a few little smut scenes that I really enjoyed reading. I really enjoyed like the actual romance. I just felt like there was still something missing, not with the romance itself, but just like the plot. On to the touch her and die trope. These are typically going to be dark romances where the guy is like, you touch this girl and I will unalive you. Starting off with a very popular Booktok one, and that is Haunting Adeline by H.D. Carlton. This is a super popular book, and it is about this girl named Adeline who is a author, and she likes to be at home, and she ends up inheriting her aunt's house, like big old mansion, and then she starts to feel like somebody's watching her, and in fact, yes, someone is watching her. It is her stalker named Zaid. It is dark, it has a lot of like non-con, so if you are into dark romance, you might like this. My niece, I read this a part of a book club. Everybody else, minus like me and like my bestie, enjoyed it. I didn't like it. My bestie felt uncomfortable with it, but like my niece, who's only like a year younger than me, just so you know, devoured the whole thing. She devoured it, and I'm like, girl, she's like little Miss Goody Two Shoes, so it's so weird to like see her devour it and then be like, I like this, I want a man like this, and I'm like, who are you? Who are you? And so I ended up rating it 2 out of 5 stars, but it is a popular one, so if you're into dark romance, you might enjoy this one. The spice, it is a lot of spice. Next, we have another dark romance. Of course, most of these are going to follow along the lines of dark romance, and it is Hooked by Emily McIntyre. This is probably the first one of the first dark romances that I've read, and it was okay. This is a Captain Hook and Wendy Darling retelling, but made it modern, and it doesn't really have any fantasy elements in it. And it made it more, is this like a mob romance? I guess this could be considered. I think they could be considered that. I liked it. I didn't love it, but that is there. Like, he is very much like touch her and die, even though he secretly, this is about Captain Hook, and his arch nemesis is Wendy Darling's father, who's like kind of like taking his people and taking over his territory. So what Hook does is steal his daughter and get her to fall in love with him. And then he wants to like kill her right before his eyes, but obviously a romance ensues. So this book is very dark. It is very disturbing. Please look up trigger warnings. I did enjoy this one more than Haunting Adeline. It just still wasn't like a 5-star for me. I ended up rating it 3 out of 5 stars. Spice is very much there, and it is written well. The spice I actually really did enjoy. 5 out of 5 stars for the spice. Next, we have Neon Gods by Katie Robert, and this is another, yes, Hades and Persephone retelling that I really loved. And this one is, again, dark romance. There's no fantasy. Basically, these like Greek gods, they sort of rule different parts of the city. Hades ruling his own like underworld sort of territory, and Persephone is forced to sort of marry Zeus in an arranged marriage, but she does not want to do so. So she runs off onto Hades's territory, and they're like, we can't do anything now. She's in Hades's territory. And yes, she is very much in Hades's territory, in his bed and on his, please censor me. And it's so good. I really enjoyed this one. This one was one of my favorite reads of 2022. This is a 5 out of 5 stars. So even though this is a dark romance, this is a dark romance that I really, really loved. Really loved. Now, let's move on to another very well-loved trope, and that is Fated Mates. Now, the first book that I want to mention for the Fated Mates trope is The Time That I Got Drunk and Saved a Demon by Kimberly Lemming. Because this book, I had not heard of it, and then all of a sudden I think now it's like gaining popularity, which it should, because it is so good. In this story, we follow our main character Cinnamon as she is basically the life of the party. She likes to drink, she likes to have fun, and we are following her after this ceremony where their goddess sends off a warrior to like fight these demons and protect their town, and Cinnamon obviously wants no part of it. She just wants a part of the party. But when she ends up walking home drunk, she is chased around by a demon, and this demon is like trying to like attack her, when all of a sudden she slaps him with a cinnamon stick across his face. And then she wakes up the next day and she's like, I swear there was a demon here, and her family's laughing at her, until the demon comes and knocking at her door. And then he's like, hey, I was in this like spell, and whatever you threw at my face, like it knocked me out of the spell. Like, what was that? I need you to help me save these people. And oh yeah, by the way, your little goddess she's a witch. She's not a goddess. And we demons do you no harm. In fact, she's the one that's like cursing us. So they go on this quest, and it's very much like Fated Mates, like these two. It's so funny, like the banter between these two characters are absolutely hilarious. You have Cinnamon, who is the funniest heroine that I have ever seen in my whole life, and I was laughing out loud. And then you have this like very like naive demon. It's so cute. Oh, and it is such a fast read. I think it's like a little over 200 pages. It's a very, very quick read, and definitely worth it. The spice is very beautiful. It's written well. Okay, it's written well. Next would be the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas. I don't want to say why because I don't want to spoil anything, but in this series we follow our main character Selena Sardathian as she is working in the salt mines, and her people are enslaved, and she among them has been enslaved as well. And she is this really like known assassin, and then all of a sudden somebody grabs her and they're like, hey, you're gonna compete in this tournament among other assassins to be the king's assassin, and if you win you get to be the king's assassin. But obviously Selena Sardathian has her own little plans, and it's great. It's great. This is a Fated Mates. It's also love triangle, slow burn. Like there's so much, and it's not just the romance of the series. There's so much more to the series. It's very fantasy based and not as much like romance based, but it's still a beautiful balance of both. The next series that I want to talk about is a YA series that I actually enjoyed as a teenager, and that is the Mediator series by Meg Cabot. This is a series that a lot of people nobody talks about the series, and I don't know why. If you liked the Dead Romantics, you would like this series, especially if you like YA. And in this series we follow our main character. I believe her name is Susie, but I could be wrong. And she's basically able to talk to the dead, right? And then she is in high school, and she basically has to move away because she had a really bad incident at one of her schools where she was like talking to the dead, and she's like, you know what, I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to talk to dead people anymore. I am done with this. It's just caused nothing but trouble. So she moves to a beautiful town called Carmel by the Sea, which I actually visited. It's a real place, and it's gorgeous. It's gorgeous. And she is so desperate to escape this life. Unfortunately, when she opens the door to her room, there's a ghost. There is a ghost. And it's so good. Like, the series I was absolutely obsessed with. I read every single one. Meg Cabot continued the series and made it like adult, where there's smut and stuff in it as well. So I really enjoyed it. It was so good, and you get to see that progression from when they're high school students versus now being adults. It's so good. Like, I highly recommend it. It is a series, but it is definitely well worth it. Completely underrated series. Now let's get to Grumpy Sunshine. The first book that I want to talk about is Delilah Green Doesn't Care. This book I loved so much. I read it last year and I really enjoyed it a lot. It still stands out to me in my head. And in this story, we follow Delilah Green as she is asked to go back to her hometown where she was bullied and treated like shiznit by her stepmom to basically take photos at her sister's wedding, and she cannot pass it up because they are offering her a lot of money. And when she goes back, she sees her longtime crush Claire, and a romance obviously ensues, and it's so beautiful. Like, I love this story. I loved Delilah. I loved Claire. I loved their story so much. Claire was very much like the bubbly one, and Delilah, she still had like personality, but she was more like the grumpy one of the two. It was adorable. It was adorable. I loved it. Gave this one a 5 out of 5 stars. And then next is Love on the Brain by Ali Hazelwood. This was actually my favorite of Ali Hazelwood's books. And this one we follow an enemies to lovers trope where this guy basically hates this woman, and then he is forced to like work with her, And he is very much super grumpy and she's like super bubbly. Like you could even just see it in the cover, that like that dynamic between them. And I actually really enjoyed this one out of all of Ali Hazelwood's books. I really liked it. And next we have Things We Never Got Over by Lucy Score. This is a small town Grumpy Sunshine romance where we follow our main character Naomi as she's trying to like rescue her sister, but her sister is like good for nothing and she sort of just like takes all her stuff and dumps her daughter on her. And now she has this niece that she didn't even know existed and she's sort of stuck in this small town, and she gets help from Knox, which is this like really grumpy character. And in stark contrast, we have Naomi, who's very like full of life and very fun and everybody loves her. And then Knox is this like grumpy guy that like nobody really likes. I loved this book so much, not really for the romance, like I wasn't a big fan of Knox, but I loved the plot. So I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. A lot of people like this book for the romance. Anyways, you guys, that is it. I hope you guys enjoyed this video as much as I enjoyed making it. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. If you haven't yet, please click the links down below for my Booktok, my Goodreads, and my Amazon wishlist down there as well. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!